Hi everyone, welcome to Undercurrents. My name is Ken Ogasawara. In today's episode, we take a road trip. We talk about MCC's new strategic plan, and we visit a neighborhood of St. Catharines that, from the outside, is the last place you'd want to move to raise a family, and why one couple did exactly that. But first, a word from our sponsor. Undercurrents is sponsored in part by Kindred Credit Union. Kindred helped to get Undercurrents off the ground back in 2020 and have been a faithful supporter ever since. And lest you think I'm one of those podcasters who only raves about a sponsor after they've become a sponsor, I will have you know that I've been a member of Kindred for nearly 30 years, starting back when Mary Lou Gingrich helped me open my first checking account. Thank you, Mary Lou. Kindred is all about helping you make peace with your money through real human advice and by using money as a force for good in your community. How many banks can say that? Go to kindredcu.com to open an account today. What makes a good neighborhood? Countless real estate blogs and articles will tell you that a good neighborhood has low crime rates, high-performing schools, close proximity to jobs and amenities like groceries and healthcare and restaurants, high walkability, accessible public transit, strong investment potential, and the article suggests that the best choice aligns with your lifestyle, offering a balance of safety, community vibe, and long-term resale value.
In 1 kilometer, take exit 44 toward Regional Road 77, Welland Avenue.
I'm on my way to Queenston, St. Catharines, a neighborhood that few realtors would recommend, and in fact most go out of their way to avoid.
Your destination is on the right.
But my colleague Tim Shields and his wife Bethany ignored the conventional wisdom of home buying and intentionally bought a house in Queenston to raise their family. This was over 10 years ago now.
And then this place can't make up its mind what it wants to be.
Okay.
It's storage, and then they took down some storage boxes, and then they put more up. It's all industrial pretty much that way down back, and then homes the rest of this way.
Right. Tim's giving me a driving tour of Queenston. His title is Community Mobilizer, and though his part-time paid role is through MCC, he is full-time, so to speak, for Queenston. His job is to help connect between the various churches, service providers, government programs, and the neighborhood association called Queenston Neighbours, all working within this corner of St. Catharines. Queenston Neighbours were consulted several times in the co-creation of the role that ultimately Tim stepped into.
In this one, they're talking about doing a development, and kids call it the haunted house. They haven't been gutsy enough to break into it, but the unhoused people had been. That's why it's boarded up. And then these are all social services, NCIL, positive living. So a lot of the services here, this is the pharmacy where a lot of our neighbors use. And then this up here is the CTS, Consumption and Treatment Center.
Okay.
Yeah. As you can see, lots of convenience stores around, but...
After a quick drive through the neighborhood, we stop in at Tim's church for a pasta dinner fundraiser.
Thank you for friendship. Thank you for relationship. We thank you for this food that we're about to eat.
There, I meet Tim's wife, Bethany, and their 3 young sons.
Hey, there's one of them. Can you say hi to Ken?
We're enjoying our meal when an older man sitting at the table with us leaned over to Tim and Bethany and shared that the leader of the weekly prayer circle he's a part of always remembers to pray for protection and safety for Tim and Bethany and their children because they live in, quote, the worst neighborhood in St. Catharines. Tim laughed it off. He's used to it. But he explained further after dinner as we were heading to our next meeting.
About our neighborhood, there's the outside perspective and then there's the inside perspective. So what you heard at dinner time is pretty much what the common outside perspective of our neighborhood. It's just a bad neighborhood. It's not a good place. But living there, I would disagree 100%. Yeah, so the outside perspective, horrible neighborhood, a lot of drug use, a lot of unhoused people, which again is not always negative.
Which is not always negative. Let's save that interesting thought for later.
The inside perspective is, when you get to know the people in the community, they're actually great people.
Right.
And the amount of compassion that actually exists in the neighborhood is also amazing. As you will find out tonight when you get to meet some of the people.
Yeah, so I'd love to get maybe start with your name.
Okay, yeah, my name is Hans, and I've been living here in the area for about 7 years. Actually, the end of January 2019 will have been 7 years that I've been living here. And my sister looked at the pictures of it and was kind of concerned about because length of time it had been vacant, but it was almost as if it was waiting for me because I took it and I liked it and I felt very comfortable and it's almost as if it was held for me. And so
Hans says his neighborhood is quiet. The few people he knows in his building are helpful, knowing that Hans is visually impaired and uses the white cane to get around.
Close to, because I often walk up to the Tim Hortons. It's about 10 minutes. Under normal, if everything's good. I mean, now in the wintertime, I try to hold off unless I know the sidewalks are clear of snow, because it's quite difficult, because when you can't see, it's traveling in the winter, even with a white cane, is very difficult. So, but other than that, I mean, the Tim Hortons is convenient. I go there, and then the park is not too far.
Hello, my name is Paula, and I am currently living in Queenston Street. I see this neighborhood very quiet, like very nice place to live. The community is very nice, starting with the school of my daughter. Well, there are kind of helpful people, and that's what I like the most about this community.
Paula came out to a community Christmas event in December, co-hosted by Queenston Neighbours and MCC, where community members and MCC volunteers came together to hang out, make Christmas cards, and pack school kits for MCC.
For example, this activity that we are doing right now, this Christmas activity, is something that demonstrates that we are growing as a community. But people don't know that because they don't see it. And if you don't see it, it's like for others, it's like it doesn't exist. But now that I live here, I understand much better this community.
I participated since the very start in 2017 as a volunteer in the Queenston neighborhood as the neighborhood group came to be.
This is Laurie Warkentin, MCC's community engagement and learning facilitator. Laurie was the one who saw the possibilities of MCC supporting and partnering with Queenston Neighbours. And it all started with the least grassrootsy thing that I can think of, a strategic plan.
And the sort of main priorities being amplify peacebuilding, strengthen local impact, and grow relationships and partnerships. As soon as I saw those three main pillars, it sparked in me that I think we could practice sort of all three of those pillars together here in this one neighborhood. It could be a way to bring together MCC volunteers and supporters together in community with those that live in the Queenston neighborhood, and sort of that potential to rub shoulders together and be changed by each other, grow understanding of each other, and just bringing people together who come from very different backgrounds is already peace building.
This is where Tim came in. He was hired by MCC to augment and support the work he was already doing as a volunteer and resident with Queenston Neighbours.
Having Tim on staff at MCC really legitimizes the relationships and helps MCC to start from a place of being known by, they know Tim. Tim is a neighbor, and that is really helpful for MCC to sort of bridge understanding between those that live in the neighborhood and those that don't, and have different experiences. Someone like me, I grew up in a background where I would have had great intentions to help, and I probably would have stood across a counter offering my help by serving soup, and had a difficult time sitting down at a table, eating soup together and getting to know someone who comes from a very different life experience.
This sitting down and eating with folks, not just serving in the traditional sense, is what Tim does effortlessly. He's not going through a checklist of the strategic plan. He's not overthinking it. He said to me in an earlier interview that most of his so-called walking alongside is literally just friendship. It doesn't get more authentic than that. He shares about a neighbor who he invited to sit on his family's front porch. He knew the apartment building this man lived in didn't have much outdoor space, and so this neighbor accepted that offer and chilled on their porch 5 days a week all through the summer. This simple connection led to more interactions.
Like, if you could see the dynamics, so the one guy who sits on our porch, I ran into him at Tim Hortons once. I was like, yeah, you know what? I got an hour. I'm got to do some reading. This is back when I was orientating for this job. End up sitting down, and his name's Dan, and he was there, and his banter back and forth with the Tim Hortons workers was hilarious. And then I was like, hey, Dan, come join me. I'll get you a coffee, and just chatting. And then I was literally reading. So he's blind, so he can't read what I had. So I was sharing him about MCC. This is like my first week of the job. I'm like, oh, yeah, here, let me share some information. They're literally like that.
Wouldn't you know it, I would have my own opportunity to meet Dan just by chance later in the evening. After the pasta dinner at his church, Tim had invited me to a meeting at the local Tim Hortons around the corner from his house with two men who minister at churches in Queenston, Mike and Paul.
My foot into Queenston is more about belonging than it is theology.
The love and passion for Queenston was evident from these two. On this particular night, they were brainstorming a documentary project featuring stories from Queenston. We were in the middle of this conversation when a visually impaired man with a white cane came in and sat at the table next to us.
Technically, the other side, Dan.
To your left. Oh, there you go.
It was Dan, Tim's porch-sitting, coffee-drinking, MCC-oriented neighbor. But what Tim did not mention about Dan was that Dan has a very unusual way of speaking.
How's it going, Dan?
Embarrassingly for me, I could not make out a word Dan was saying. But Tim understood Dan perfectly and replied to him in a quiet, level voice.
It's 20-7. You're welcome.
The reason Tim could understand Dan was because he had spent time with Dan. Tim didn't shy away from a potentially awkward interaction or mind his own business and move on. He invited Dan to sit on his porch. He bought Dan a coffee and shared his MCC orientation package with him. He walked alongside Dan as a friend and as a neighbor, simple as that.
What is it?
Have a great night.
Oh, thank you, Dan.
God called us to that community. We wanted to connect to the community and get to know the people in the community. Because again, we had already been doing some volunteer stuff down there, but you don't only really make an impact when you actually develop a relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
Right? That's so important. Yeah. So I'd say, yes, it's a mission field, but in being the hands and feet of Christ, right?
Right.
If you want to help, you form a relationship and then you can.
The residents of Queenston defy the outsider perspective. Within only a few hours of spending time with Tim in Queenston, it's clear the insider perspective can see much more compassion, care, and a sense of community. But that doesn't mean there aren't urgent needs. And there is one challenge that has long been an issue in Queenston, and it's not addicts, or safe consumption sites, or unhoused folks.
At least since I've been part of Queenston Neighbours, it's long been the biggest topic of discussion. Or the most consistent, shall we say.
Is the grocery store.
Everybody's like, well, why don't we have one?
The grocery store.
People into it, and it's like the number of people so determines whether a big...
To parody Matthew 4, verse 4, one does not live on Tim Hortons coffees and donuts alone, but on fresh and healthy food that comes from an affordable grocery store. Queenston is a food desert. Having to go more than 1 kilometer for fresh groceries may not seem like a big deal. After all, many of us regularly drive multiple kilometers to get our groceries. But being okay with this assumes invisible resources and privileges that many folks in Queenston simply don't have.
So again, it's the income class level, right? So there are a lot of people that don't drive in our neighborhood. So that's also a like the demographic of who lives there. In ours, there's a lot of people with mobility issues.
Remember Hans earlier talking about how difficult it is to get around in the wintertime as a visually impaired person? The sidewalks I was walking on with Tim were for the most part unplowed and icy. It's tricky enough on two able legs, but with a walker or wheelchair or cane, the idea of a 2-kilometer round trip is unthinkable.
People have looked into it, and it's like number of people also determines whether a big grocery store comes in. But a big grocery store comes in, you know, you're subject to their costs and prices, which...
Right.
Bethany literally just called me 2 days ago and was like, I'm having sticker shock. I'm not getting this, and this because of the prices of it.
Right.
I do most of the grocery shopping, or try to.
This is the big project that MCC is collaborating with Queenston neighbors on. An affordable, local grocery store. But Lori and Tim know that this community idea requires creativity, partnerships, and money to make something like this a sustainable reality. One of the gaps that were identified over the years was a business plan, including a feasibility study exploring various models and further community consulting to make sure anything being planned would be relevant and what the community needs. MCC offered to support this initiative through funding for a consultant and a feasibility study, and Queenston neighbors enthusiastically welcomed this partnership. Tim and his neighbors are proactively thinking about how to keep the neighborhood inclusive and affordable, even as they work to improve it.
Sure, we want a nice, clean neighborhood, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But we also care about the people that are in our neighborhood. You know, the unhoused are residents of this community.
Do you remember earlier when Tim was describing the outside perspective of Queenston? All they see is the drug users and the unhoused. And Tim said, almost as an afterthought, not that those are necessarily negative. You might think this is a bridge too far. How can those things not be a negative? But I think Tim is making a distinction between the obvious harm of being unhoused or addicted and the dignity and rights inherent in that person. There is still a need to be realistic, though, about community safety for all. It's all well and good to provide a safe consumption and treatment center for those suffering from addiction, but what if my children have to walk past there on the way to school? Not everybody hanging around in front is on their best behavior, and sometimes they are a risk to passerbys and to themselves. As a matter of fact, this exact issue did come up at Queenston. But instead of advocating to relocate the Safe Consumption and Treatment Center, they simply made sure that a few staff members of the treatment center were out front during the times that the children walked to and from school, to ensure safety for everybody.
And if you start looking at everybody in the community the same way, like that way, the residents, they live here.
Yeah.
So they're part of the community. So everything you do should involve everyone. It should improve for everyone.
Right.
Not kick out the ones that you don't want. Like you said, they're not in my backyard thing, right?
Yeah.
No, don't kick them out. We want to improve their life. How do you do that? Like I'm invested. I know my neighbors, hang out with my neighbors. I try to solve neighborly conflicts when I can. Again, that peaceful middle child thing. You know, I gotta be the peacemaker.
Right.
That's why I fit at MCC so well.
Yeah. There you go.
MCC is like a middle child organization.
Yeah. Peacebuilding. We finish off the evening with a meeting called the Queenston Round Table, held in one of the classrooms of the local elementary school.
Please have respect for everybody. We encourage every idea. They're all welcome. And
Tim chairs the meeting, where 18 people show up, including residents, a teacher from the school, service workers, church volunteers, and more. There are updates on the life-saving work at the local safe consumption site, a volunteer sharing about the latest affordable housing advocacy initiative. Mike pitches the Queenston Documentary Project. Every one of them showing up on a frigid weekday evening, passionate about their love for Queenston and the well-being of all its residents.
Drive carefully going home. Thank you. Thanks. I know. It's a bit of a hike. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Before I head home, I have one more stop to make.
But I might need to use your walker before I leave, so I'm going to have to brave your dog.
You heard my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on in.
Welcome to my home.
Thank you. Hi. It smells like apple crisp or something.
Oh, she's been baking an apple pie. Our school has a pie auction.
At the beginning of this episode, we asked ourselves, what makes a good neighborhood? We heard things like low crime rates, high-performing schools, close proximity to jobs and amenities, accessible public transit, strong investment potential, and of course, the best choice aligning with your lifestyle, offering a balance of safety, community vibe, and long-term resale value. The outside perspective would look at Queenston and see almost none of those characteristics. Like Queenston resident Paula said, if you don't see it, it's like it doesn't exist. But having spent just a few hours with Tim through planned and unplanned interactions with neighbors and residents, suddenly I can see that Queenston does in fact have many of these things. They just don't appear as we think they should. Strong investment potential? Queenston residents are clearly invested, just not in the capitalist way we view real estate. Alignment with your lifestyle, a balance of safety and community vibe and long-term resale value? With the exception of the last part, Tim and Bethany could not care less about long-term resale value. Queenston fits the bill. Safety and dignity for all residents. A community vibe that clearly shows care and love for each other. So next time you're cruising the QEW on your way to Niagara's finest winery or bougie cafe, drop in on Queenston. Tim will be happy to show you what a good neighborhood and a great neighbor looks like. As usual, we're going to finish with 3 levels of reflection. The first is a changed perspective. Have you heard something in this story that changed your heart or your mind? Is there something in your current perspective around homelessness, for example, or property values, or who belongs in your neighborhood that you might not be seeing or that challenged you? The second stage is changed relationships. Jesus doesn't have a lot to say about what makes a good neighborhood, but he was very clear on what makes a good neighbor. Will you relate differently with unhoused people or differently abled folks like Dan? Might there be opportunities for this every time you walk the streets or drop in on a Tim Hortons? And finally, the third level is changed systems. What are the ways in which we can change the systems that we live in that push already marginalized folks further into the margins instead of including them? Maybe you're part of your own neighborhood association and realize there are ways to be more welcoming, to open the door wider, to set another place at the table. I want to thank Paula, Hans, Mike, Paul, Dan, Lori, and Tim, and all the folks of Queenston who welcomed me and helped to redefine for me what a good neighborhood looks like. I'll leave a link in the show notes to the Queenston Neighbours website where you can see the latest community events they're planning. Undercurrents is sponsored in part by Kindred Credit Union. This episode was produced with help from Kristen Kong, artwork by Jesse Bergen, and theme music by Brian McMillan. Executive produced by Sandra Reimer. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please rate and review and share Undercurrents wherever you listen to podcasts, including now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode in 2 weeks. My name is Ken Ogasawara. Have a great rest of your day.